When we think of the Hall of Fame, we think of legends. Names like Jerry Rice, Tom Brady, Walter Payton, Lawrence Taylor. Players who dominated for decades, cementing their place in football immortality. But what about the forgotten ones? The players who had the talent, the dominance, the aura of greatness, but whose bodies betrayed them. Players who might have been gold jacket legends if not for one cruel twist of fate: injuries. This is the story of 10 NFL players who would have been Hall of Famers if their health hadn't been ripped away.
1. Terrell Davis, RB, Denver Broncos. Terrell Davis didn't just run the football. He ran through defenses like a wrecking ball. Drafted in the 6th round, he wasn't supposed to be special. But from 1995 to 1998, Davis was untouchable. He rushed for 6,413 yards in just 4 years, carried John Elway's Broncos to back-to-back Super Bowl titles, and even won NFL MVP in 1998 with a staggering 2,008 rushing yards. He was on track to become one of the greatest backs ever. But then came the knees. A torn ACL, torn MCL, and lingering cartilage problems destroyed his explosiveness. By 29, he was gone from the league. Davis still made the Hall of Fame, but his case was controversial because his dominance burned bright for only a few years. Imagine if those knees had held up. He might have broken Emmitt Smith's all-time rushing record. Instead, his career became a what-if story.
2. Bo Jackson, RB, Los Angeles Raiders. Bo Jackson was a myth turned real. A two-sport phenom, Bo was stronger, faster, and more explosive than anyone alive. In the NFL, he averaged 5.4 yards per carry, better than Barry Sanders, better than Jim Brown. He didn't just run past defenders, he ran through them. But in January 1991, during a playoff game, Bo dislocated his hip on what looked like a routine tackle. What nobody knew at the time was that the injury cut off blood supply to his hip joint, leading to necrosis. His NFL career ended instantly. Doctors once said Bo might never walk properly again. The world had lost one of the greatest athletes ever to a single freak injury. If he had 10 healthy NFL seasons, we'd be talking about him as the GOAT. Bo Jackson is still the only athlete in history to be named an All-Star in both the NFL and MLB. He could have been the greatest dual-sport legend of all time, until one hit ended it all.
3. Gale Sayers, RB, Chicago Bears. The Kansas Comet wasn't just good, he was revolutionary. In 1965, as a rookie, Gale Sayers scored 22 touchdowns in just 14 games. His speed, his vision, his cuts, it was like watching an artist with the football. But greatness comes with fragility. Sayers suffered multiple knee injuries, and even with surgeries, he never regained the same burst. By the age of 28, his career was over. Here's the crazy part. He still made the Hall of Fame despite playing only 68 career games. Less than 5 full seasons. That's how electrifying he was. If his knees held up, he might have rewritten the entire history of running backs. 4. Andrew Luck, QB, Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck wasn't just talented, he was supposed to be the guy, the next Peyton Manning. Drafted #1 overall in 2012, Luck had the arm, the IQ, and the leadership. He dragged mediocre Colts rosters into the playoffs year after year. But the hits piled up. A torn labrum in his shoulder, lacerated kidney, rib injuries, a lingering calf strain that became unbearable. By 2019, at just 29 years old, Luck shocked the NFL by retiring. In tears, he admitted that the constant pain had taken the joy out of the game. He left with 23,671 passing yards and 171 touchdowns in just 6 full seasons. If healthy, he might have chased 60,000 yards and multiple MVPs. Instead, his name lives on as one of the greatest what-could-have-been stories in NFL history. Andrew Luck was sacked 174 times in 6 seasons. That's more punishment than Tom Brady took in his first 10 years. The Colts didn't protect their franchise QB, and it cost them everything.
5. Sterling Sharp, wide receiver, Green Bay Packers. Before his brother Shannon became a Hall of Fame tight end, Sterling Sharp was that guy for the Packers. From 1988 to 1994, he was one of the most dominant wide receivers in the game. He led the NFL in receptions 3 times, touchdowns twice, and once in yards. In 1992 and 1993, he posted back-to-back seasons of 100-plus catches, something unheard of at the time. He had already stacked 65 TDs and over 8,000 yards in just 7 years. He was on a collision course with Jerry Rice in the record books. And then, tragedy struck. In 1994, a severe neck injury forced him into early retirement at just 29. One moment, he was the best receiver in football. The next, he was gone forever. Sterling Sharp is one of only 7 players in NFL history to win the Triple Crown for receivers, leading the league in catches, yards, and touchdowns in the same year. And he did it all before age 30.
6. Robert Griffin III, QB, Washington. In 2012, RG3 was electric. The Rookie of the Year, the face of a new generation of quarterbacks. He threw for 3,200 yards, rushed for 815 more, and accounted for 27 touchdowns. He had Washington back in the playoffs, and he looked unstoppable. But his playing style came with risk. In the playoffs, Griffin tore his ACL and LCL. He was never the same. His speed, his shiftiness, his magic, it all vanished. By 2015, he was benched. By 2017, he was gone from the league. If injuries never touched him, RG3 could have been the prototype dual-threat QB before Lamar Jackson ever existed. Instead, he became a cautionary tale.
7. Penny Hardaway of football, Marcus Lattimore, RB, South Carolina, San Francisco 49ers. Marcus Lattimore never even got his MFL chance. At South Carolina, he was one of the most dominant running backs in college football, destined to be a first-round pick. But in 2011 and again in 2012, he suffered catastrophic knee injuries that shredded ligaments and cartilage. The 49ers drafted him in 2013, hoping he'd recover. But his knees never allowed him to play a single down in the NFL. His story is one of the saddest what-ifs ever, because his talent was unquestioned. Doctors once said Marcus Lattimore's knee looked like a car crash injury, something they usually saw in trauma victims, not athletes. He lost his entire NFL future before it began.
8. Chad Pennington, QB, New York Jets. Chad Pennington was one of the most accurate quarterbacks ever. His career completion percentage of 66.0% is still one of the best in NFL history. But his shoulder couldn't survive the punishment. He tore his rotator cuff multiple times, forcing him to completely rebuild his throwing motion again and again. Despite that, he won Comeback Player of the Year twice, something no other player has done. But the constant surgeries robbed him of arm strength, and he was out of the league by 34. If healthy, Pennington could have been the franchise QB the Jets had been searching for decades. Instead, his name became synonymous with wasted potential.
9. Carson Palmer, QB, Cincinnati Bengals. Before injuries, Carson Palmer looked like a future Hall of Famer. The #1 pick in 2003, he led the Bengals to the playoffs in 2005 with 32 TDs and over 4,100 yards. He was ascending fast. But in his first playoff game, Palmer tore his ACL on a low hit. He returned, but never quite regained that same dominance. Later in his career with Arizona, he had flashes of greatness, like a 4,600-yard season in 2015, but his body never let him sustain it. If Palmer's knee had held up, the Bengals might have become a dynasty. Instead, his career feels like an unfinished novel.
10. Cam Newton, QB, Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton is controversial on this list because he did win an MVP and went to a Super Bowl. But let's be honest, if not for injuries, he'd already be in the Hall of Fame conversation. In 2015, Newton was a force of nature. 35 passing TDs, 10 rushing TDs, and a 15-1 record. But shoulder injuries and foot surgeries robbed him of both his throwing power and his mobility. By 2020, he was barely a starter. At his peak, he was one of the most unique QBs in NFL history. Bigger than linebackers, faster than safeties, with a cannon for an arm. Injuries turned Superman into just another mortal. Cam Newton has 75 rushing touchdowns, more than any quarterback in NFL history. If his body held up, he might have shattered rushing records while winning multiple MVPs.
Closing thoughts. These 10 names remind us of something painful about football. Greatness isn't just about talent, it's about survival. The NFL is a war of attrition, and sometimes the best players never get to write their full story. From Bo Jackson's hip, to Andrew Luck's broken body, to Sterling Sharp's neck, these aren't just stats, they're tragedies of what could have been. If football is a game of legends, these are the ghosts of Canton, the players who should have had a gold jacket, but instead left us with nothing but highlights and heart.